very good. I mean, it's good news, bad news, right? So if you got a great ROI, those private equity companies are all over it. So you can get that spend versus probably other companies that may not be as sharp and crisp, competing for the same dollar.
Yeah, and I mean, we heard that a few of them when we first worked with them, they said, you guys want to do like 6 days of demos. And we're like, no, we don't have 6 days. Like, come in, and once they know, obviously, your solution and they feel confident with it, then a lot of that selling time goes away. It's very much like, is this a good fit? Yes, you guys have done this now for us 10 times. You've got the systems up and running. We're getting a great return. How quick can you do it? So that's a very different, sale and style of selling than someone that is maybe hired a selection consultant and is going to look at 8 different companies and go through a very formal process. So again, we have a specialized team that just focuses on private equity for that reason.
Wow. Thinking about demos, I don't know if you ever came across John McMahon. I was with him last week, and he's going to be next week on our podcast. So he was PTC medic, and he has this really good book, Qualified Sales Leader. He tells a story at PTC, the go-go years. They do the sales call, and the customer says, "Okay, great, we'll take a demo or do a trial." They said, "No, we don't do it. You buy it now." So that's a good way to shorten the sales cycle as long as they buy off on it.
Exactly.
And then Ryan, I know Ryan's at Phone Ready Leads, which is a great company. Says, curious, I'd imagine your sales team is quite busy serving businesses in the supply chain. So during the kind of COVID, those kind of supply chain type companies, was that like super busy or was it slow because things were so crazy?
Yeah, it was very busy. All of our clients, 98% were deemed essential. And so we were kind of surprised. We didn't see customers stop implementations, and we didn't see sales cycles stop. So we basically, continued to travel. We did do some adjustments where people that were closer to things that could drive, we adjusted some territories, and also on the services side, really developed some remote capabilities, which I think, frankly, have become a best practice now, where before we felt we had to do everything on site. We've done much better job sort of understanding what can be done virtually and what can be done on site. But we were extremely busy during COVID. A number of our clients also had to shift emphasis, maybe if they were making, plastic, machineries and things for office buildings. Now they were making plastic shields that went up on, for hospitality. So there was a lot of work even from our development teams to sort of help address questions or how would I change this? How would I shift this? So we were extremely busy, and I think that did help fuel a lot of our growth. We didn't ever really get to that point where we were all hunkered down sort of at home. So it was really an exciting time for us.
Oh, awesome. So we have Tucker from John O'Keefe. I guess I can do both questions at the same time. Has the macro environment impacted sales productivity? And do you have any priorities to raise sales productivity?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I was just looking at all the statistics that were coming out. And again, our verticals are really, really specific. So for us, we do look at things like the PMI index, right? For lumber and building materials, it's home starts, right? Price of lumber, things like that sort of drive concern. And so I think we have not seen any kind of real slowdown despite watching the 6 o'clock news. We still see customers investing in technology. We have not seen projects get canceled because of any concern over the economy. So I think for us, in terms of just our sales teams, they are busy. But I do think we did learn quite a bit during the pandemic in terms of leveraging, as I said, tools like the video more often, and just all the qualification capabilities that we're doing. And then leveraging the ecosystem, right? I mentioned the selection consultants and private equity, but that's been a tremendous amount of lead generation for us that traditionally we would have had to, go and do ourselves, right? And so extending your ecosystem and really understanding how that can help drive your leads and ultimately your pipeline, I think is key. One of the things I talk about is sort of growing the business. To grow the business, I really have 3 specific areas. And the first one is growing mind share. So before I worry about growing market share or wallet share, which are the other two, mind share to me is crucial. And that is everything from your brand, but it also includes this ecosystem. It's, do the influencers know us? Do they know our story? Does Randy know us? Are we out talking to people, right? Are we visible on LinkedIn? Are we being profiled to speak at industry events, right? So, and I really challenge all of my sales leaders and sales managers and even our sales teams directly. Your job is to also grow mind share within your reach, right? Your community and your ecosystem. So I think once that started to happen at Epicor, and that's really, we've seen a huge change in the last 2 years. It's like your brand gets out there, there's more people talking about you, and then ultimately that helps lead to more opportunities to where you can grow your market share. And ultimately, once you land that customer, growing the wallet share within that client.
No, good. Great question, John. Thanks. So moving on before I forget. So our title topic is ERP dead. So I think of ERP kind of old, tired, it's legacy. If I'm a seller, hey, I want to go for the next new hot thing. Why the heck would I ever want to do anything with ERP? But yet you've had amazing kind of retention and amazing results. So kind of what's the real, I'm sure my perspective is perception. So you can let me know what reality is.
Yeah, and I think, I've been in this market for 30 years. So it's also, for me, I think, looking at software maybe with a different lens, right? So when I really look at it, there was a reason back in 2000 people went to ERP. They were worried about a date change and a system failure. Right, we saw the pandemic drive a lot of people into new ERP systems in the cloud because they needed remote capabilities for their workers, and all of a sudden security became a huge issue, right? And so for me, the beauty of ERP is really the ability to sort of reinvent the messaging around that, the business value that you take to the client based on these market conditions. And we've been very successful, doing that at Epicor for sure. But I would say even for me over my career, I've been able to do that very successfully working for some of the most, the largest ERP companies that are out there by really thinking and making sure that the message follows with what's happening. So now a lot of it is around digital transformation. It's about engaging, and bringing in new technologies, whether that's IoT or artificial intelligence. All of those things are great, but if they're not connected to the backbone of your company, which is basically that digital platform of ERP, they're not going to do you any good, and you're not going to get the same kind of results. So I think for us, that's really our message is, first you've got to get that backbone. It's got to be modern. It needs to be in the cloud, and it needs to be business flow orchestrated. And I think that's one of the advantages we're seeing in terms of a resurgence now is that for a while, a lot of companies did let each department go pick their own system, right? I think even in our marketing department, at one point we had 20 different marketing products, right? Because everybody needed one little piece, and then they don't talk together, they're not integrated, or we didn't have one solid view of the customer. And so I told you earlier, but that's one of the big transformations we're on is sort of an entire quote to cash view of our customers that will enable our sales reps all the way through the customer billing and then into the service side so that we will have one single view of our customers at any given point. And it's really hard to do that when each department goes out and picks, 10 different solutions. So that's really, so ERP is not dead. I think if anything, when we look at the next thing, which is data as a service and insights and really intelligent decision-making, again, having that single platform really enables you to do that. So, but I think it is a great message for sales. I mentioned earlier about the tenure we have at Epicor. I'm really proud of that, especially on the sales side. Our average tenure is over 10 years. You just don't see that in software sales. And I think that's why, because we continue to, really focus in on what is the message and the value of the system now versus a sales rep maybe thinking every 2 years, I got to go to the next cool hot product, in order to sell. And I think the opposite is the truth. So just a different perspective, but definitely it's not dead, definitely thriving, and lots of growth, obviously, not just at our company, but many of our competitors too that are focused in on these markets.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, I mean, you've been there 6 years. I mean, most people in your shoes would be 18 months. CEO Murph has been there for how long?
6 years as well. Yeah.
I mean, it's rare. You got the CEO, you got the go-to-market leader, and then having the reps are 10 years. I mean, a lot of companies you see
Our head of services,
rotate through, the reps say, "Hey, I'm out of here," blah blah blah. So kudos to you guys for sure. So you had some great awards. 2021 Sales Executive of the Year from Best in Business. Last year, the Stevie Award for Sales and Customer Service for Woman of the Year. So those awards are great, but obviously you've done amazing with some diversity best practices. Can you maybe touch on a couple of those?
Yeah, I mean, that is important to me. I started off in sales in a male-dominated industry as well. So not just in high-tech sales, but then, I'm not selling into fashion, right? Or, retail, at least not the fun side of the retail business. So for me, I've been in sort of manufacturing, distribution, automotive my whole life. So, I think part of it is it really does sort of start with the top and sort of trying to recruit and bring talent into the organization. I do that quite extensively. I've been involved with a number of local colleges trying to ensure that we're reaching out to people that may be very good presenters, that have a business background like I did, that maybe don't want to go be an accountant or don't want to go do that job, and say, why not think about software, either pre-sales or sales?
Right.
You can really do great here. So I think part of it is it's recruiting at that level. And then also I think for me, being at the level I'm at, I have other women leaders who want to come work for me and stay, probably because the environment is good. And so we have been very good at Epicor, continuing to promote from within. And make sure that we're giving people the opportunity. But, whether it's a woman or it's just diversity, even in the executive team, with all sorts of races, I mean, it is an important area now, especially when we look at, what's going on globally. But that is something I certainly take pride on. And, I also belong to a women's executive committee, or I guess club is a good way to put it, called Chief, yes. And it's a great organization that really empowers women to work with other women and help them as they navigate their career. And honestly, half the conversations aren't about work necessarily. It's about how they balance maybe dealing with an individual at work that is troublesome, and just helping someone sort of through issues and challenges that maybe you've seen. So, these were things that just didn't exist when I was young in my career. So it's exciting for me to see now that women have a little bit more support than they had in the past.
Yeah, great comments there for sure. And a lot of times I get asked, hey, how can we improve diversity? How can we improve women in sales? I mean, you kind of have the population that you have. I totally agree with what you said is, you really need to go back to the schools, because there are so many that have sales programs. I'm always shocked by the number of schools that do not have sales programs, which is crazy, because most people, especially liberal arts schools, end up in sales anyway. But kind of go and cultivate, that population and say, hey, it can be a great job. No matter what you decide to do in life, you can, something that you can do forever. So I think that's really what needs to be the big push, don't you?
Absolutely.
That's crazy. And then I'll give it another shout out. So for International Women's Day, I love your shout out to, you called it your two amazing daughters-in-law. I don't know if they're listening or not. Katie Black, who's a senior project manager at Intuitive, and Mary Pope, who's a privacy advisor at USAA. So love that. Very cool there.
Yeah, they're great. And, they make, obviously, my son stronger. And they both met at college, one in Boston. They're both biomed engineers, and then the others at TCU. And then Mary Louise went on to law school. So, really good diversity in terms of just, their backgrounds, where they came from. And they're just amazing women. So it's great to sort of support that next younger generation, for sure.
Yeah. It was fun watching the TCU run.
Until the last game. But I've been a big sports fan. I was pretty vocal about not liking the whole selection process in football, right? Because I'm a basketball fan, and so I love March Madness because everybody gets a chance. And I always felt football was sort of, skewed towards brands. So I use the same terminology a lot when I talk about Epicor because our brand was sort of a tier 2 brand. And so other people get invited to opportunities that we may not. And I use that analogy a lot with sports. So, I know this year TCU got a great shot. I don't think anybody could have beat Georgia on that day, but
Alabama could have. What are you talking about?
Oh, I don't know. Not this year. But I do think it was great to see that happen. Yeah. So, but yeah, it was heartbreaking, certainly at the end of it. But what a great run! So
awesome. And then I'm just going to keep moving on, but I'll just give some other shout outs. So you've got your Insights conference in May. You've got Jerry Seinfeld there, so that's awesome. You're an ERP partner for a Formula One car, Scuderia Alpha Tori. So really cool there. Saw the car got unveiled at New York Fashion Week. Epicor is a cool podcast called Manufacturing the Future, hosted by Carrie Jordan. And also I love that you guys are back doing the sales trips. So you got your 100 top sales pros at your Sales of Excellence trip at the Four Seasons in Punta Mita. And I think you said you actually you did the club trips even during COVID?
We did. Part of it was the way our fiscal year fell. So we had the ability to not cancel one that was pre-COVID. And then the other one, we couldn't go to Hawaii, but we had a lot of skiers. We ended up going to Jackson Hole.
Nice.
Did sort of a winter, location that clearly people were not worried about the virus. We definitely, I think mainly like we said, our reps were all flying and still traveling to clients. So there was a thought like, then how do we cancel the award trip? They're not working, so that we need to keep it going.
Yeah, love that. I fell into Corbett's couloir once, so that's my claim to fame. All right, so a couple kind of quick questions. So one is, any advice for people breaking into tech sales?
Yeah, I think it is tough. Forget the economic situation. I just think, it's highly specialized. So I think my advice is be really specific about your background and your skills. And if you don't feel that you know enough about a specific industry or a specific area, then take the time to really dive down and learn, because I think that is what ends up getting hired. I see so many resumes that come across, and for me, it is somebody that actually has either worked in that industry. So for example, I'll give you an idea, but like I will go hire somebody who's worked at a distribution company or a manufacturing company or a retailer because they know the customer that we're serving, right? I can teach them some of the other things about software sales, but if they've got sales background and know the industry, that's a unique skill set that I will look for that maybe other recruiters that wouldn't necessarily, hit their frame of mind. Secondly, definitely leverage your network. So, and again, that gets back to what I said earlier about mind share and your personal ecosystem. I can't stress that enough, especially if you're young in career, is to continue to leverage that and leverage the people that you know. And that includes, if you are really young in career, your parents' friends, right? I always said I won't hire my own kids, and I haven't, and I won't. Or grandkids for that matter, when they're old enough. But I will look and at least, someone that I know, I will definitely take that resume and say, okay, move that into somebody and say, hey, this is somebody that I do know, put them through the process. And sometimes that makes the difference, right? It's just, they still got to get the job on their own, but they at least get a chance at that.